Welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Lina Naranjo. Today we have theater professor and published playwright director and actress Sara Guerrero. She's the founding artistic director of her independent theater ensemble and currently an artist in residence at Cal State Fullerton's Grand Central Arts Center. Guerrero is known for bringing diverse, cultural, rich stories to the stage. In honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, please welcome Sara Guerrero to the show. Thank you so much for being here today, Sara. It's an honor. I know you've done so many accomplishments, and it's just an honor to be able to, as someone who's part of the Hispanic community, being able to amplify the voices. For those who are part of the Latinx community, it's inspiring. So I know you have over 2 decades of experience in performing arts. What first sparked your interest for theater?
I think as a kid, I've always been drawn to storytelling. Performing. My mom, who was a teacher, saw it too and was really, really supportive of letting me play, allowing me to really tap into my imagination and storytelling. I just didn't know that there was a thing called theater. It was just, getting up, telling a story. I remember as a kid, I loved knock-knock jokes, and I think I drove my family crazy. My mom had made. My mom was also really crafty and, also an incredible storyteller to her own right. She made this giant table out of a giant industrial spool. And that was our coffee table. And I think that was like my first stage. I would rummage through her clothing. I would put on pieces and become these different characters and sort of like put on the show that evening. And I think my family just really tolerated my love of playing and storytelling. And that's kind of where it started.
That's awesome. And as a little kid, you were just curious and you wanted to learn more. Yeah. And when was your first time being on stage and performing?
I want to say when I was probably before I was 5. I was a panda. I was tapping, and I'm a little panda bear, something like that. I still have it in my head. And I think one of the teachers had asked my mom to get me off stage because we had finished. So, again, like really at a young age, I was already performing. And of course, like I was also drawn to writing and writing stories and just sort of like really inspired by who was around me. In 5th grade, my 5th grade teacher, I think because I was talking a lot and just telling jokes, encouraged me to write a play for my 5th grade class, a Thanksgiving play. And I think that was the first time I really read what a play was, because I didn't know what a play was. So I went to our little library, our school library, and was like, what's a play? And came across some plays by some dead white men. And then like trying to find stories on Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims, the Native Americans. And at the time, my tia Cecilia, who had studied Chicano studies at UCI, and I can't remember if she was still going to school at the time or if she had already graduated, but she was kind of a little voice in my ear, like, there's another side to the indigenous community, what happened to them with the Pilgrims. So that's kind of what the play came out to. I don't remember exactly everything, but I remember it raised eyebrows. Mm-hmm. But like that was the first time I wrote a play and I directed it. And I directed like everybody in my 5th grade class. Wow. And I had written a part for everybody, and I think recess became rehearsal time. And I think my grandma and my mom helped me make some costumes, and some students brought like their moms or their dads were making like finding stuff and sort of throwing it on. And that was like my first, like, I think starting to like what this is, out of research and my love of researching and reading as well. I mean, I think it all just found its place in theater.
And I think that's awesome that you started at such a young age. Like being able to give up your recess is a lot for for a little kid.
And to ask like maybe 30 other kids to give up recess is a
The
lot.
dedication is there. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you've played many roles on stage, you know, and you also play a role as a professor here at Cal State Fullerton. I know originally you didn't want to pursue, or you just weren't looking to become a professor. How did that start, or what made you want to
Well,
teach?
I mean, I started and I finally decided to go into acting. I was always drawn to theater through the schools that I went through. I went through the public school system at Santa Ana Unified, and I always found my way into theater. Throughout my time, I just didn't know I could actually like make a career out of it. And so I had a really good friend, family friend, who was like, I think you need to become an actor. I think acting is your thing. And when I was in high school, I didn't apply to colleges because I just didn't have the confidence, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My mom was in education. I had aunts and uncles who were professionals who went to college, but I honestly did not know. It was like become a teacher or a lawyer, a doctor, and I was like, I don't think I fit in any of those categories. And I went away. I ended up doing foreign exchange and living in another country, and it was through watching theater in another country. I mean, again, here I was finding myself drawn to theater in another country, and I was like, oh, this is something I could do. But again, I wasn't really seeing it yet. And coming back, my mom was like, hey, you need to do something with your life. You need to go either to school, get a job, do a trade. I found myself going to a junior college and doing spot in theater. And it was through spot, getting to know the faculty, and they were casting Blood Wedding. And I auditioned because I was like, oh, it'll be kind of fun. If I don't, I'll just do spot, because it was paying. And it was also like, Mom, see, I'm going to school and I got a job. I got cast as the bride. And the show was sold out. There was an encore production in the second semester. And I found myself applying to another art school out of, again, my family friend who was at Cal Arts at the time was like, why don't you apply here? So I applied there and got in. And I was like, oh, I'm going to study acting. And and asking my mom, because I was like, what is she going to say? I mean, she's always been supportive, but this was huge financially. It was a big ask because school even then was expensive, and it's gotten incredibly expensive, and this was a private school. And she's like, yeah, of course, do it, And so I was like, wow, okay. So I went, and I studied acting. And what was really, really hard was, I had come out of a community that I saw myself every day. And my mom had found, my mom volunteered a lot with a women's organization, a Latina women's organization. And she would get tickets, especially for a theater company here, a professional theater company that would host Hispanic Playwrights Project. And that started in the 80s. So she would take me to go see the readings and the work that came out of that process. So I saw representation. I was like, oh, this is normal. But when I went to college, it wasn't, and it was really, really hard to see representation, or seeing myself or understanding what my identity was, because I wasn't really thinking about who was I, how do I market myself? I was there just to act. But there was a lot of things that was brought to my attention that I wasn't quite aware of, and I definitely wasn't given the skill set to figure that out. And it was really, really frustrating, and I really had a hard time seeing myself in the program. And so when you're in a space there to study acting, and you're asked to how do you see yourself? Where is representation? And you're like, well, I don't see it. So do I even exist? So writing has always been essential to the process for me and reminding myself of my voice. I would leave the school and I would pursue my work as an actor, but also I became a resident playwright as well. So I was writing as well for EOP in Los Angeles, I think more specifically the Antelope Valley. Anyway, so here I was writing, trying to create some representation, pursuing acting, but not really seeing myself, or what was available was really like stereotypes written by people who didn't necessarily, who weren't really writing for me, you know. It was very ornamental characters, or very secondary, or maybe even probably third, you know, very 1 to 2 dimensional. And you know, going into a casting room and being asked questions like, are you legal to work here? Were you born here? How did you lose your accent? You know, and then also just sort of those kind of stigmatisms, and then also like saying that you're from Orange County. You know, there was definitely prejudices, not only for the way I looked and the way I sounded, but when people found out, or when I would share I was from Orange County, it was like, there's no culture there. There's no, you know, you're coming from the Orange Curtain, you know, like you don't exist. So it was really about working against what people's expectations. And so I found myself leaving acting and transitioning into theater for social justice, which I can go into more, but so, yeah.
Awesome, and I think it's cool.
I hope I didn't go off on a tangent.
No, I loved it. I think the more the merrier, and I think it's really cool that you're able to use those experiences and now being able to teach it to the students here at Cal State Fullerton, and just overall in general.
And to that, I eventually became a teaching assistant to one of my professors, who were teaching at it was part of our college, where we would support our professors, our professionals of our campus, and we would go into the Los Angeles community and work with organizations. Like if you were a graphic designer, you would go to Self-Help Graphics. I was in theater, so I went to Plaza de la Raza, and it was through this program called Community Arts Partnership. Anyway, I saw the kids there who were from Lincoln Heights and Boyle Heights, and I saw myself in them. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I want this for my community, in Santa Ana specifically. So that was really, it was a huge epiphany for me. Like I was like, oh wow, this is what theater did for me, and I am seeing myself, you know, and I want this for my community. So that was really also a spark that started to make me think about a bigger picture and how this could potentially translate in my community. I just didn't know how or what that was.
And you mentioned Santa Ana, and I know you're very involved with Santa Ana. I was actually raised in Santa Ana, so I think that's awesome. Okay, cool. Awesome. So how did projects there start for you at Santa Ana?
Well, so again, going back to seeing theater done with community, with youth, as an undergrad, I wanted something like this. I just didn't know what it was. And finding myself back in Santa Ana doing theater, I originally started to work with a group called Teatro Indígena, who's no longer here, but founded by Pablo Eduardo Rivera. And I became his associate artistic director. And we started doing theater. We did it at Coos Arts Cafe, which no longer exists, but it was kind of like a start of really of creating a home for art making in Santa Ana, because Santa Ana has two mottos: education first and arts and culture. And it was kind of like, well, where's the arts and culture? And it's here. It's always there. It's always been there. It's just, does it have the support, or is it, you know, or is it visible? And it is visible to communities, but maybe not to the larger audience. So and then out of Teatro Indígena, I started working with other organizations in Orange County, but I never felt like a home yet. And eventually, Breath of Fire came out of that necessity, you know, meeting other Latina women who started their own small businesses out of necessity, out of need. And it was Rosie's Garage. And Rosie used to be the mayor of La Habra. And she, through her story, inspired Breath of Fire. Like, why isn't there a Latina organization, a theater organization in Santa Ana? It definitely launched its New Works Festival. It had all these things going on, but that's how it sort of came to be.
Awesome. And you talk about Breath of Fire Latina Theater Ensemble, which is the only Latina theater company in Orange County, which is amazing. Can you tell me a little bit more about this organization and kind of what challenges you faced along the way?
Okay, well, I think burnout, funding, resources. I think we've always been resilient and resourceful, but there was a time when I thought we were going to close. And it was back in 2011. We had done a show, we had produced a play, co-produced a play with Cherie Moraga, who is a mera mera in the Chicano world of theater, poetry, and queer community. And so she had not been produced in over 10 years, and phenomenal writer and poet as well. And so we had the great honor of producing her work, Digging Up the Dirt. And that was really challenging because that was a hard production, but it was incredible. And then to follow up with Janine Selena Schonberg's Angel of the Desert, which we did at South Coast Repertory, it was we had this little humble home that really worked like beyond 100% hard for Digging Up the Dirt. Like it was like, wow, we need to really, we need to do more. We need more. And we really, we utilized as much as the resources and extended ourselves above and beyond. And that was really challenging. And then to go to a space that has a huge budget, beautiful spaces, organization, fully supported. And then to go back to our humble home, it was like, I feel a little broken. I want more, but I'm kind of hitting a wall. And for me, I was a new mom. I mean, I wasn't new, but I was relatively a new mom. And I had, and Breath of Fire was like this other child for me. And I needed to take care of my health. I needed to take care of my family. And my work was being pulled in other directions as well. And I needed to make a decision for myself, and I needed to let go of the space, because managing a space and a nonprofit are two different things on top of a season. So it was like the little engine that needed a break. And so, and also our neighbors, El Centro Cultural de Mexico, were forced out of the space. So losing them as a neighbor felt like a good time to leave. And also the space, the management of the space kind of kept setting us apart, I guess. Anyway, so we closed up our space, and then we were kind of on a hiatus. We were on a working hiatus, but it was like, are we closing? But we kept the nonprofit just going, like the bare minimum. And there was some things that kind of came out of Breath of Fire in that time from 2012, but really it was at a bare minimum to non-existent. And I found myself working for other organizations, performing arts organizations, to create spaces where people found themselves as creatives. Our community could see themselves supported, could tell their story, saw their representation. And so that's kind of where I found myself. And a little prior to that, I was already shifting into education for conservatories, ensemble. My focus was ensemble building for first year students, or working with students who didn't have necessarily an acting background. It was like non-majors for acting. And so it was really exciting because I would work with sometimes animators, writers on utilizing ensemble building storytelling through theater for them. And also community members who, although were storytellers in their own right, it was just sort of using like theater and ensemble building as a framework to bring us together to tell stories.
And as I mentioned earlier, it is Hispanic Heritage Month. Mm-hmm. So how would you say your heritage has influenced you in theater and in education?
I didn't think it would be. like I think I kind of took it for granted, or I wasn't quite aware. Like seeing representation on stage, I was like, oh, I see myself, but I didn't necessarily see like, oh, that's Hispanic, that's Chicano, that's Latino, that's Mexican American. I just assumed that existed. But when I came to realize that that was very non-existent in most places, it made me want more. It made me understand what my role is. Like, do I want to be an ambassador? Did I always want to try to advocate? Like, I just wanted to be an actor and do my work, but the work wasn't there. The work was not existent, and it didn't justify in storytelling. So, and I really wanted, like, paying all that money to do work and do all the research, to do all the lifting that you have to do as an actor. What was written and what was presented was not equitable. And so I found myself having to make the decision, and I find myself really involved in the Latinx, Latina community, because I started a Latina theater company. That wasn't necessarily what I was trying to achieve, but lack of representation and trying to create equity for someone like myself, that became more clear, more apparent. Like, even owning the word and calling myself Chicana took time. Like, I identify as a Chicana. That didn't happen at an early age, because it made me feel like, oh, that's somebody who's radical. That's somebody who's like an activist. And I didn't see myself as an activist. Like, I know people who are activists, and I'm like, oh, that's a Chicana, that's a Chicano, that's a Chicanx, and it took me some time. And I have to say that I credit Adelina Anthony, who was working with Shuri Moraga, that watching her and talking with her made me realize that I could own that title, but it comes with a responsibility. And I, again, like, there are activists that are out there that are más chingon than I am, that are constantly at it. And I sometimes have to, like, am I doing enough? Am I, and I feel like if you are trying to create representation, it's a responsibility. It's a lot of work. I hope that I'm not doing mediocre work. And I feel like there's this assumption that you have to not only do the work, but you have to represent your community. So there's a lot, and I belong to a group called the Artistic Directors of Color of the Greater Los Angeles, and it's 14 organizations, predominantly in Los Angeles, artistic directors of color, and we all come from different walks of life, and it was through the pandemic that this group formed and I became a part of. But I felt like I found a group that I can feel connected with, that we are lifting each other. It's not just my Latino, Mexican American, Chicano community, but it's also lifting my community of color, because there's a lot of times when we are pitted against each other, even within the Latino, Mexican American, Chicano, Chicanx community. Like, we are to fight for the scraps, and it's like, no. Let's find a way to work together. Let's find a way to lift each other, because that's important. That's important in the conversation, And there's also, like, within the Latino community, Latinx, there's also our Asian community. There's our Black community. We're all a part. There's not just one side. There are so many complexities and sides to it that, like, I am just one of the storytellers, and that I can carry I can reflect what I've experienced, but my experience is not the one experience.
And last question I have for you is, what's any advice you'd give students who want to get into theater, or just theater in general? And I know you mentioned earlier you yourself, from your experience, you felt invisible. So also advice for students who may feel that as well.
I think if you feel invisible, I think it's really about what's going on with you internally. Like, journaling, for me, was really a great tool. Like, for some others, maybe it's dancing, maybe it's composing music, maybe it's creating music. I think it's really just finding the thing that helps to ground you. I don't necessarily know what's going to happen at the end, although, like, as a director, this is what we're supposed to have, a production. but definitely like there are things that happen along the journey that 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 you have to sort of address, and you have to like, there's obstacles, you know, in any journey, and how you decide to either work around or confront the obstacle or get through it. It's, you know, what I love about working in production is you have a team. Sometimes you don't have a team when you're doing those things. So it's really about like trying to figure that out, you know. And for me, I always tell my group or whoever I'm working with, like, it's okay to not have the answer. Maybe you'll find the answer down the road. You know, maybe there's something that that grabs your attention, or something like Jose Cruz Gonzalez calls them butterflies, and like you collect these little things and you don't know what to do with them, but then you open your book again or your journal and you like, this is what this butterfly was meant for, this is what this was meant for. So sometimes things that happen in the moment may not have an answer, and that's okay. I also like, you know, give yourself space for things that you love. You know, if you are doing something and you are not finding, you have to find the joy. And if you cannot find the joy, then maybe you need to ask yourself, is this the right thing for me? You know, I love acting, but as I went through the process, I really found my love for writing and for directing. You know, most recently I wrote a play. It's probably older than my son. Have to Believe We Are Magic, and it's really about a love letter to growing up in Orange County, specifically Santa Ana and Anaheim. You know, a little Chicana growing up and trying to figure out life and what is magic and where is your magic was incredible. Like I was just in Arkansas, fully supported as a playwright for 2 weeks with Fran De Leon as my director, Sara Guerrero, who was part of my cast, just amazing cast. For 2 weeks, I was completely supported as a playwright. And I'm much older in my journey, so to be able to explore that possibility later in my life, it has been exciting because I love writing. So you never know when you'll find a new chapter in your life or something else to explore. You know, I've always kept myself open that way. I don't necessarily think everybody works that way, but my curiosity has always driven me. Questions have always driven me. My love of playing is important to my practice. And I think that's part of it, is knowing what brings you joy, being able to play, what grounds you, you know, and knowing your boundaries and taking care of yourself. I mean, this is a laundry list. This is laundry. And again, like, I'm still learning. Like, I am close to almost half a century and I'm still learning. And the work that I get to do brings me great joy, but it comes with a lot of hard work. This is not easy work. This is not an easy field. So it does come with time, with networking. You know, you have to take risk. You have to sometimes get past yourself. And it's really listening to your instincts and sometimes understanding that maybe right now I don't have the answer, and maybe down the road, I will find it.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. I would like to thank our guest, Sara Guerrero, again for joining us. I'm Lina Naranjo. Thank you for watching this episode of In Focus.